I just got back from a week on the road. No agenda, no set schedule, and I have to be honest, it was amazing. For me especially because my history with the spinal cord injury, I literally have not been on the road having a relaxing trip, just truly getting away from things for 10 years. Can you imagine? I mean, pandemic aside, it was great getting on the road just because of a year of lockdown. But for me, it was extra special because it was my first time to actually just go explore and enjoy a trip spontaneously. No extra planning, nothing. But the thing is, where else can you do that except in the Solopreneur Life? Where else can you just say, hey, you know what? I want to go look at this part of the country. Hop in the car and go. That's what we are going to talk about today. Welcome to the Solopreneur Life Podcast. I'm your host, Kathryn Aragon, and today we're going to talk about freedom and finances. Stay tuned and I will tell you about this trip we took, why we hopped in the car on a whim, and the impact it could have on our finances. Don't miss a single episode of the Solopreneur Life Podcast. So before we go any further, subscribe now so you don't miss anything. There are a couple of reasons that we took this trip, and some of it was just the fun of hopping in the car, but there's never just one reason for anything we do. I'm always baffled by that. Someone will ask, so why'd you do that? And what they want is one clean, clear reason. And for me, I never know how to answer that because it's like, well, which one do I pick? Which one is going to be the most effective as I talk to this person? But the reality is there are always a lot of reasons, and that's true for this trip. First of all, I think I really started looking at the possibility of moving after the Great Freeze of 21 in February. This was an infrastructure failure that, in my opinion, should never have happened. It makes me distrust the system here. The fact that we went for a week with no heat and no water is slightly terrifying. That should not have happened. And it was an eye-opener that despite the fact that I'm paying incredibly high property taxes, they're not investing that money where it needs to go. And so that's reason number two. We live in a state here in Texas with no income tax. Well, that sounds on surface really valuable, but they make up for it. You're still paying the tax. It's just we're paying for it with inordinately high property taxes. And it wasn't until I started looking around that I realized that's what was happening. You just, on surface level, oh, look, we have no state income tax, woohoo. But you're not looking at all the numbers. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then there's this third reason, and this is really probably the biggest reason. That is, I'm looking ahead to the next phase of my life. This is a tip. Again, we're going to talk more about this in a minute, but we should always be looking ahead. Yes, you want to live in the moment. You want to be fully present at this moment, but you also need to have an eye on the future. What's coming up and how can I begin preparing so it's an easy transition? What's coming up and how can I be preparing so I can step right into this thing and make it happen? That's where overnight successes happen. Someone was looking ahead and was ready for it so they could jump on an opportunity just at a moment's notice. Well, retirement is not something that you should wait to plan for. And I'm getting close enough that it's like, no, I want to really set myself up so that's an easy way. I don't know, the transition, I guess, but I want an easy life. After I retire, I want to make sure that I'm provided for. And the thing of it is, you need to make sure that your housing costs are affordable. Now, I've already paid off my house, but I'm looking at these property taxes and see, this is what happened. Just like 2-3 weeks ago in the mail, we got our assessment of what our property taxes will be this year. It was a 10% hike over last year. That's outrageous when it's already incredibly high and an infrastructure failure just happened. It's like, again, what am I paying for? I'm almost making a house payment each month as I save to pay that property tax. So there's an awareness that this may not be the best place, the best house to retire in. I've got to figure out a way to lower that cost so retirement can be easier to step into. Otherwise, am I going to have to work till the day I die? That's not the goal, is it? That's never the goal. So I was asking myself this question, and I've been asking this question for a long time, actually, but I got kind of serious about it over the last few months, and that is, if I could live anywhere, where would it be? If you think about it, that's not something we ever really ask ourselves. Well, maybe the young people do. If you're just out of school and you're like, the world is wide open, where would you go? And I know my son and his girlfriend are looking at traveling the world, and they're living lean on purpose so they can up and go whenever they want. But, once you've had kids and you've had a house, you're settled. You stop asking that question because it's too big of a question. You're not thinking in terms of where could I go? You're just thinking, how can I maximize where I'm at? And many times we're following jobs. We move where we are because someone in the family has a physical job and they have to be there. Think about this. As a solopreneur, I don't have to be anywhere. And but even if you do have a regular job, since the pandemic hit, a lot of companies are moving to a virtual work arrangement where they're more than comfortable. They realize the company doesn't suffer for having people work remotely, and they can actually get better help if they can get people from anywhere in the world. It's a win-win, isn't it? But that raises the question, if I could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? Well, I used to look at like Ecuador and things like that because it was like, what? If there are places in the world where I could live at a much lower cost, maybe that's worth it. But the more I thought about that, the more I thought, I'm raising a lot of other problems. Maybe it fixes that problem, but there are other challenges that come with that. And I don't want to have to think too much. I would like to just pick a place that's comfortable for me, where I fit. And so I started looking around all over the greater United States. And, initially I was looking at California because that's where my kids live. I looked at Arizona, and then I was reading an article about the best places to retire. So I thought, well, why don't we do a little research to back up this decision? And it said Colorado Springs. And I was like, okay, well, let me go look at Colorado. And I started opening houses up, and I was seeing this really small property tax on each of the houses. And I was like, wait. Was this a house that was a retiree, and that's why the property tax is so low? But every house I looked at had this little tiny property tax. And I was like, okay, so clearly I'm overpaying for this. This is not normal, having to make a small house payment every single month. So that's when I started looking at these houses and going, you know what, there are some equivalent houses, something just as nice as what I'm living in, a view of the mountains, and almost no property tax. So I was showing these houses to my husband, and we were like, well, but would we even like it there? And I'm like, I would have to be there to know. I kind of need to feel the environment to know if it feels comfortable, if it feels like I fit. And so we decided, you know what? There's nothing major going on this week. Let's hop in the car and drive up there. So that's what we did. Sunday afternoon, we made this decision. We just wrapped up a few things, and the next morning we hopped in the car and drove up to Colorado. Now, it took 2 days to do this, but you know what? A road trip is always fun. It's really my favorite way to travel. So I think we were still in Texas on the first night. Texas is a big state. It's going to be interesting living in a smaller state. And then, so we woke up really early Tuesday morning and decided, let's not just hang around. Let's just get on the road. So it was mid-afternoon or maybe around noonish that we got to Colorado Springs, and we were looking at the houses there, and it was like, yeah, this is all right. Let's go on up to Denver. So we drove on up to Denver, and we found our happy place. It was such a great environment. I don't know why I just never considered Denver as a place to go. I guess in my brain I was thinking lots of snow, it's too cold. But honestly, they're not normal. They're not like the wet snow you get in so many other places. It's a dry snow, and yes, it's a long winter, but super mild summer. Someone who's used to over 100 degrees in the summers, that's kind of a refreshing thought. And it's just such a clean, beautiful city. It's like, you know what? I think we're going to move here. So yeah, but then we come to this other challenge. The property taxes are just one piece of the puzzle. And whenever you're making a financial decision, whenever you're making a big decision like this, you need to look at the big picture. And what I like to do is I like to run use cases. Okay, best case scenario, worst case scenario. How will this impact us if we make this change? So I ran the numbers looking at not just property taxes, but also state income taxes, and ignoring federal because that's not going to change. Turns out at the moment we would save thousands of dollars to go. And in the future it might cost us something, but honestly, because my priority is to set up for retirement, it's like, okay, this is kind of a no-brainer. And here's a tip I want to share with you. Always set your priority when you're trying to make a decision, because if we just looked at all the numbers, we might end up staying where we're at. Because right now we have a gorgeous home. It's huge. We would have to give that up. We would have to downsize. We would be moving to a colder climate, all this stuff. But what's the priority? The priority is to set ourselves up for an easy retirement. And Colorado gives a break to retirees on their state income tax. So that helps that future number a little bit. The trick is, there's always a catch, right? You have to have lived there for 10 years. So I'm like, okay, well then the priority is not to put off the decision. The priority is to actually make this decision quickly. If we decide this is a good move, we should do it now. See how you do that. You need to weight your different criteria, and whichever one is the most important, that's what you focus on. And you kind of let some of those other criteria fall to just be supplemental decision makers. And that's how you avoid decision paralysis. Focus on what matters, and then go ahead and make a bold decision. So our bold decision is, I think we're going to move to Colorado, which is an adventure, When we were young, we were so spontaneous. When we were out of college. My husband's first job was in Miami, Florida. We were there about a year and decided, you know what, it's time for grad school. And so we threw everything in the back of a trailer, hauled it to Texas, and we didn't have a place to stay. We figured, we'll find it when we get there. And that's kind of the approach we're taking with this house. We're just returning to our roots of throwing everything in the truck. We're going to have to sell our house and then move up there and find something. So it's going to be an adventure, and I'm kind of excited about it because I haven't done anything like that in years. Which brings me to our next topic. As a solopreneur, you are in charge of your finances. Now that's a good thing and a bad thing. Most people see it as a scary thing because having a paycheck makes you feel secure, right? It makes you feel like you know what your future holds. The pandemic kind of revealed that may not be true. I've never felt like it's true. I don't like my future being determined by somebody else's whims. And if you're qualified for a promotion and they just refuse to give it to you, or if someone in the company decides, you know what, we need to restructure and we think you should be over here, and it's a job you hate, you have no control over that, do you? Whereas as a solopreneur, your life is in your hands. Now, that's more responsibility in a way, but way more freedom. And also, it removes all the caps. You can earn as much money as you decide you want to earn. Now, you have to be strategic. You have to think like a business owner. Again, more responsibility, but ultimately, it's your choice. And I love that kind of freedom. If you're a solopreneur, you know what I'm talking about. You probably do too. But here's the deal. I talk a lot in writing about, the two types of people there are. There's pantsers. They fly by the seat of their pants. And there are planners, people who plot things out and follow step-by-step instructions or whatever. In finances, you do need to be a planner. You really do. You can pants it, but it will hurt you financially. You will always be kind of behind the eight ball as a pantser because it takes time to create momentum. Many times when a need comes up, it's immediate. And if you didn't anticipate that need, you probably aren't ready for it. So many times we talk about building a reserve of finances. If you had several months of income in the bank, that would protect you if anything happened. One of my ways of handling this is I try to create at least 3 streams of income. That may be three different clients. So if I ever lost one, I would still have 2. I never go to 0. It could also be, clients and Solopreneur Life and this other and some affiliate income, anything like that. So think in terms of 3s when you're thinking of your finances, and also kind of be a planner. You can still be spontaneous, but plan ahead. That's essentially what I'm doing, thinking about moving to a state where there's a lower property tax and a break for retirees. That's a really good way to plan for my future. But as we think about finances, we need to think about how to create more cash flow, because there really are 2 ways to do it. You can raise your income, get another client, for instance, but you can also lower your expenses. And that's essentially what this trip to Colorado is all about. I wanted to see if it was viable to move to another location and lower my overhead. So anytime you lower your overhead, you raise the available cash in hand. That helps you be able to afford more things, or just stock more away in savings. That's really my favorite thing to do. So what are ways you can do that? Believe it or not, you don't just have to move to lower your standard of living. To create more cash flow. You can change your location, sure. So as I mentioned years ago, I was looking at, would being an expat be a good way to do it? You can move to another state where maybe what you do need to do is lower the income tax. Maybe it's lower property taxes, or maybe it's not another state. Maybe it's just a different neighborhood. Maybe you're overextended. You've got a bigger house than you need. You could downsize or just get a more affordable house. That's going to free up cash that you can use more productively. You can also get more efficient with your tools. So are you paying rent, those monthly payments, on tools that you don't need? Recently, I made the decision to let go of Microsoft Word because all of my clients use Google Docs. And honestly, the more I use it, the more I like it. I love that I can create a document on one of my devices and access it from all of my others. I also love that it's never saved. I can keep updating it. So, whatever the version was on this other device, the minute I open it up somewhere else, it's the latest version. I don't have to worry about numbering the versions. Little things like that. So moving to Google Docs freed up quite a bit of money for me every year. But do focus on those tools that cost you money every month, because some of them are worth it. Some of them, that is the best tool you can get, and you should keep paying for it. But in many cases, there is a substitute, or maybe it's not even a tool you really need. I went, I think it was like 3 or 4 years, I was paying for a webinar tool and not using it. And after a while, it was like, okay, I know I'm planning ahead. I know I plan to use webinars, but now is not the time. I need to let this go. And it was just a way of freeing up that cash to make sure that the money that I had in hand could be used for whatever is the priority now. Another thing is stop buying so many tools. In the Hub, which is the Solopreneur Life community, and by the way, if you aren't a member of it, you need to come. We as solopreneurs, we need community. We need one another to help us resolve the challenges that we face, figure out how to handle things, just to share our ideas, get feedback, and help us get outside our own heads. And the Hub is the perfect place to do that. So if you haven't joined us yet, go to solopreneurlife.com right now and check out the Hub. You're going to love it. One of the things that we discovered very quickly is that we all have this minor addiction to AppSumo. And the reason is those monthly payments. In AppSumo, you can get these brand new tools. They're just being developed, which means you can get in them at a low price and with no monthly payment. And every now and then we'll miss a deal, and it just makes us hooked all the more. That fear of missing out keeps us there and investing in new tools. Now, I don't recommend you overbuy, because this is the whole point, right? Not getting too many tools. But sometimes there are ways you can get a great tool at a really great price, and it's worth trying, right? So definitely check out AppSumo, but don't go crazy on it, because you may be spending more on tools than you need to. So I always like to think in terms of, what do I need to accomplish? What are my future plans for my business? And if I can go ahead and get a tool for it right now, that's what I want to do. That's actually how I ended up putting together the Solopreneur Live conference. I had just bought a conference tool, a virtual conference tool on AppSumo. And then I came up with the idea for Solopreneur Life, and it was like, oh, this is perfect. It was just so synchronous. Everything coming together at a moment. And it was like, we are putting on a conference. I got busy on Solopreneur Live, and I'm so glad I did, because it turns out that tool was perfect. So yes, invest in your tools, but be efficient. Try to focus on what you're going to be doing in the future or in the near future, and get the tools you need, but none others. Say no to yourself. It's worth it. There's one more. So what are ways we're talking about? I've rambled a bit. If you want to lower your expenses, you can change your location. So just sometimes moving your house and fixing your housing situation can make a difference. Get more efficient with your tools. Stop buying so many tools, something I'm a little guilty of, and negotiate a lower rate on the payments you do have. Believe it or not, you can call different companies and negotiate a lower rate. So they may say no, but what does it hurt to ask? So don't be afraid to do that. If it's a tool you absolutely need, but you can't quite afford it, maybe offer an exchange. I will be an evangelist for you if you will do this for me. Or just, hey, do you have a lower rate? I really need to lower this expense, but I don't want to let this go. Many times there is something they can do for you. Now, raising your income is the primary focus. So we've talked about lowering your expenses, but you still have to make money, right? If you aren't making money, you don't actually have a business. You have a hobby. So let's figure out a couple of ways you can raise your income. Always be looking ahead. Like I said, that's what my trip to Colorado was about, looking ahead. What's this next phase of my life, and what am I going to need to set up to make sure that I'm comfortable? Always forecast your earnings. Run scenarios. Okay, if this is my best case scenario financially, and this is my worst case scenario, will I be okay? Can I make it? What do I need to do to fix the situation? Always be aware it takes time to generate streams of income. Just because you turn the on button on does not mean money is going to start flowing right away. You need to anticipate months and sometimes a year or more to actually hit the income that you were hoping for from that endeavor, from that activity. So plan in advance. That's so, so important. This is why I say financially, I don't care if you're a pantser everywhere else. Financially, you need to be a planner. If it makes sense, raise your rates. Many times, if you raise your rates, you will be the most expensive option. And if you're an elite, if you're a well-known commodity, then by all means you can get away with that. But many times, if you're the most expensive on somebody else's budget line, you're the first thing to get cut when they start cutting expenses. So you want to find this middle ground where you raise your rates as high as you can raise them, but still be a good deal for your clients. So they'll keep you even when things get tight. I've got a client who needed to tighten the belt come winter, but they didn't want to let me go. I was a little on the high side for their budget, but they came and said, okay, but can we keep with you if we lower? See, they called up the vendor and said, hey, can we have a lower rate? And we worked out a deal that was equitable for both of us. So like I said, you can call people and ask for a lower rate, but your clients can do that with you also. So make sure you let them know that, I need to raise my rates, but can you handle it? And if not, can we work out a deal where this works better for me? Maybe I need to give you less time because you can't afford the higher rates that I'm now going to. So think outside the box. Be willing to be creative as you think about this stuff. Finally, create new income streams. This is my favorite because I'm a creative. I love strategizing new opportunities. And my greatest, heartache, I guess is the word to use, is that there's not more hours in the day. There are so many things in life I would love to do, and I have more ideas than I can handle. So I just oh my goodness, I need more time to get all of this stuff done. Create new income streams. Create something that fits comfortably into your life. And many times it may start out as a side gig and may turn into your main gig. Many times I do that. I start something on the side and I think, I want to give this a little bit of love because I'm pretty sure this can turn into something amazing. So, just look at the different opportunities available to you and start something new. Now, I'm going to give you one final trick for raising your income that is shocking to me. Seriously shocking. I was talking just yesterday with one of my clients, and it was a checkup meeting. I was just, are you okay with everything we're doing? Anything you want to see changed? He was like, I love what you're doing. I have another project for you. But one of the things that he said that I do that he likes is I invoice on time. Is that not the funniest thing you've ever heard? Who doesn't invoice on time? His comment was, I can't really come and run your business for you. That's so true. Why are you not invoicing? If you finish the project, you have completed. I get the assignments from this client. I get a list of deliverables for the month. At the end of the month, I invoice. But what we've just recently slipped into is we're working from the 15th through the 15th. In the middle of the month, he gives me the assignments for the next month. By the middle of the month, I finish them. And as soon as I turn in my last deliverable, I put together an invoice and I send it. That gives me about a week leeway. He puts together the next month's deliverables, the assignments, and he gets them to me and I start hitting deadlines. That's such an easy thing to do. If you want to raise your income, send out invoices. Seriously. You can't miss that one. So, it also, believe it or not, I love getting paid right away. I have 2 clients, the minute I send them an invoice, I get paid. And it's like, whew, they're my favorites. Seriously. It's just, I can count on them. It's almost like having a paycheck because I can count on them that much. But they need to count on us too. We need to be responsible business owners. You don't have a business if you aren't bringing in money. So send out the invoice. It really does make a difference. So that's it for today. We have talked about freedom and finances. The freedom to think about where you want to live, how you want to live, and who you want to work with. Let's add that in, right? This seeking freedom was what prompted our trip to Colorado, and it really was a discovery trip. Would we like to live in this new area? When we got there, we discovered, you know what? We like it here. Who cares if it's colder? Usually that's an issue for me. But I have winter coats, right? And the view of the mountain, oh my goodness, it is beautiful there. So we may be moving there because why? We have the freedom to go wherever the flip we want. And so do you. As a solopreneur, you have a ton of freedom. Use that freedom to your advantage. Look at your finances. Look at the things that you might need to change to improve your financial situation, because you are in control. You're not a victim of your circumstances. Own that. Next week, we are going to talk more about some of the things that you can do as a solopreneur. We're going to talk about the different types of work you can do as a solopreneur. Don't miss it. So subscribe to the Solopreneur Life Podcast wherever you tune in. You can subscribe on YouTube as well, because we also publish there. And then take a moment to visit us at solopreneurlife.com. I am accepting guest posts there. And if you would like to see your byline on a blog, if you would have ideas that you would like to share with other solopreneurs, this is the place to publish your article. Send me a pitch, and I will definitely consider it. And I mentioned the hub a little bit earlier. Seriously, you may work solo, but you should never go it alone. And with the hub, you don't have to. We are a community of people who truly care about one another and support one another. We just had our monthly meetup last week, and it was such a fun time. One of our members got put on the hot seat, and just based on his likes, his dislikes, the things that he actually wants to do but's a little bit afraid to go there, we actually encouraged him to find a new niche, to settle into it, and just go for it, because honestly, I expect great things from him once he has settled in and just does it. But so many times we hold ourselves back, and it takes that community to help us see into the blind spot. See into the place where we're afraid to see because, I don't know, maybe we care too much. So, today's episode is brought to you by Kathryn Aragon Media. That is also my parent company. And if you ever are in the need of help with content strategy, help with your podcast, help with your website, let me know, because I am there for you. Until next week, stay awesome.